Captain Vexithara stood in the communication chamber of her scout ship, watching the holographic display with growing horror. The messages came from 3 different species, all telling the same terrible story. The Krell had sent a raiding fleet to the 3rd planet of the Sol system. None returned. The Vorthan Empire had launched a full invasion force. Only broken signals came back filled with screams and warnings. "Stay away from the blue world," the last Vorthan transmission said. "They turned our own weapons against us. They fight like demons." The most recent message came from the Nexari Collective. Their final words were simple. "Earth is a trap. Do not come here." Vexthara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she processed the information. 3 different species, all technologically advanced, all completely destroyed by what the galactic records called a primitive world. The inhabitants had barely reached their own moon. They used chemical rockets and metal bullets. How could they defeat starships and energy weapons? She walked down the corridor to the detention area. Inside the cell sat the human they had captured 6 months ago during a border skirmish. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison looked up as she approached. His face showed no fear, only curiosity. "Captain," Jake said with a slight smile, "you look worried." "Your people," Vexthara began, then stopped. The human had been polite during his imprisonment, even helpful when asked about human culture. But there was something in his eyes that made her uncomfortable, a calmness that seemed wrong for a prisoner. "What about my people?" Jake asked. Vexithara activated the force field controls and stepped into the cell. Jake did not move to attack her. He simply waited, patient as a predator. "The hegemonic empire is coming to your world," she said. "They have 12 species in their alliance, 40,000 ships. They have never lost a war." Jake's smile grew wider. "How interesting. This is not a joke, human. The Empire destroys worlds that resist them. They have weapons that can crack planets. Your people have no shields, no energy weapons, no faster-than-light travel. They will be slaughtered." Jake stood up slowly. Even in the low gravity of the Zephyrian ship, he moved with perfect balance. "Captain, may I ask you something?" Vexithara nodded. "What kind of world did your people evolve on?" The question seemed strange, but Vexithara answered. "Zephyr Prime. It has stable weather, 2 small moons, and a yellow sun. The temperature varies only 5 degrees between seasons. We have no dangerous predators. Our civilization developed through trade and cooperation." "Peaceful world," Jake said. "Good for your people. What about the Empire species?" "Similar worlds. The hegemonic races all come from stable planets. Order, hierarchy, predictable environments. This is why they are so successful in conquest. They bring order to chaos." Jake laughed, and the sound made Vexithara step backward. There was no humor in it. "Captain, let me tell you about Earth. Our planet tries to kill us every single day. We have weather storms that can level cities, earthquakes that swallow mountains, volcanoes that block out the sun, animals that hunt us for food, plants that are poisonous to touch, diseases that jump between species." He began pacing the small cell, and Vexithara noticed how he moved, like water flowing around obstacles ready to change direction in an instant. "We have wars, Captain. Not like your trade disputes or the Empire's conquests. Real wars where entire populations fight to the death. We have weapons designed to kill our own species. We practice warfare as art, as science, as entertainment." "Entertainment?" Vexithara asked. "We have games where we simulate combat, sports where we compete in controlled violence, stories where heroes fight impossible odds and win through determination. We teach our children that surrender is worse than death." Jake stopped pacing and looked directly at her. "Every human learns to fight from childhood, not just soldiers, everyone. A human farmer knows how to use explosives. A human teacher knows field medicine. A human shopkeeper knows basic tactics. We do not have civilians the way other species do." Vexithara felt a chill run through her body. "But the Empire has superior technology. Technology can be captured, studied, improved. The Empire species, they think like you do. Logical, orderly, predictable. They follow rules of warfare that make sense to civilized people. Jake's smile turned predatory. Humans do not fight civilized wars, Captain. We fight to win, no matter the cost. We use everything as a weapon. Our entire planet is one big training ground for warfare, and every human is a graduate of the most brutal military academy in the galaxy. The implications hit Vexithara like a physical blow. The Empire will not listen to warnings, they never have. Then they will learn, Jake said simply. Vexithara left the cell and returned to her command center. She opened a communication channel to the Empire fleet that was already moving toward the Sol system. Admiral Korthak's massive reptilian face appeared on the screen. "Zephyrian vessel, state your business," the Admiral said. "Admiral, I must warn you about the world you plan to attack. Earth is not what it appears to be." Korthak's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The inhabitants are not primitive. They are apex predators from a death world. 3 previous invasion attempts have resulted in complete destruction of the attacking forces." The Admiral laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Zephyrian cowardice is well known. We have analyzed Earth's defenses. They are pathetic. Nuclear weapons, chemical rockets, metal projectiles. They cannot even leave their own solar system. Admiral, please listen. These humans evolved under conditions that would kill most galactic species. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They—" "Enough," Korthak interrupted. "The Empire has conquered 1,000 worlds. No primitive species has ever resisted us successfully. Your warnings are noted and dismissed." The transmission ended. Vexithara stared at the empty screen, knowing she had just witnessed the beginning of a disaster. She had tried to save the Empire from itself, but their arrogance was complete. She thought about Jake Morrison, sitting calmly in his cell, smiling at news that should terrify any reasonable person. The human was not afraid of a massive invasion fleet. If anything, he seemed pleased by the challenge. Vexithara gave orders to change course, taking her ship away from the Sol system. The Zephyrians would not participate in what was coming. They would watch from a safe distance as the galaxy's most powerful empire learned what happened when apex predators were cornered on their home ground. In his cell, Jake Morrison was humming an old Earth song, something about bringing on rain. Admiral Korthak stood before the tactical display in the command center of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion. Around him, representatives from all 12 species of the hegemonic empire studied the data streaming from their sensors. The blue world called Earth hung in the center of the hologram, looking peaceful and defenseless. "Pathetic," General Thane said through his mechanical voice box. The cyborg's metal face showed no expression, but his tone carried complete disdain. No energy shields around their cities, no orbital defense platforms. Their most powerful weapons are primitive fusion bombs. Commander Zixtal, representing the Insectoid Hive Collective, clicked her mandibles in agreement. Their space presence is minimal. A few stations around their moon, some basic satellites. They cannot even travel between stars. Korthak nodded, his massive claws tracing attack vectors on the holographic display. "The conquest will take 3 days at most. Standard invasion protocol: destroy their military installations, occupy their major population centers, demand surrender from their leaders." "What of the Zephyrian warning?" asked Dr. Mordeth, the Empire's chief xenobiologist. The tall, gray-skinned scientist seemed troubled. 3 previous species attempted invasion and failed completely. "Zephyrian propaganda," Korthak growled. "They spread fear to protect their trade routes. I have reviewed the data on those supposed invasions. The Krell sent only raiders, criminals, and outcasts. The Vorthan Empire was already collapsing from internal conflict. The Nexari Collective attacked with outdated equipment. General Thane's cybernetic eye zoomed in on Earth's surface. "I detect no advanced technology. Their aircraft move slower than our atmospheric fighters. Their ground vehicles use chemical propulsion. Their soldiers carry kinetic weapons, metal projectiles fired by explosive powder." The other commanders laughed. Kinetic weapons had been abandoned by most galactic civilizations thousands of years ago. Energy weapons were cleaner, more efficient, more controllable. On Earth, Colonel Ryan Hayes stood in the command center buried deep beneath NORAD. Around him, screens showed the approaching enemy fleet. Thousands of ships, more than humanity had ever faced in their worst nightmares. "Estimated time to engagement?" he asked. Major Lisa Carter checked her displays. 72 hours until they reach the outer planets. Another 12 hours to Earth, orbit if they maintain current speed. Dr. Kevin Brooks looked up from his analysis station. "Ryan, we need to talk about something. I've been studying the Empire species data we gathered from previous encounters. Every single one of them evolved on garden worlds. Stable climates, predictable weather, limited predators. What's your point, Kevin? They think like prey animals that learn to use tools. Their entire concept of warfare is based on overwhelming force and quick surrender. They have never fought a species that considers dying in battle an acceptable outcome." Amy Foster, the communications specialist, raised her hand. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy fleet. Standard surrender demand." "Put it on screen." Admiral Korthak's massive form filled the display. Behind him, representatives of the Empire species stood in formation. The sight was designed to intimidate. 12 different types of alien, all united in conquest. "Primitive inhabitants of the third planet," Korthak began. "You are commanded to surrender immediately. Lower any defensive systems, ground all aircraft, and prepare your leaders for transport to our command vessel. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your world." Colonel Hayes stepped forward. He was not an impressive figure compared to the alien admiral, shorter, smaller, wearing a simple military uniform instead of ornate armor, but his voice carried absolute conviction. "Admiral Korthak of the hegemonic empire. This is Colonel Ryan Hayes speaking for Earth Defense Command. Your surrender demand is rejected. You are not welcome in our solar system. Leave now, and you will not be harmed." The silence that followed lasted 10 seconds. Then Admiral Korthak began laughing, a sound like grinding stone that made his subordinates join in. "Human, you possess no weapons that can threaten us. Our shields can deflect your primitive missiles. Our armor can resist your kinetic weapons. Our numbers are overwhelming. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire." Hayes's expression did not change. "Admiral, you have been warned. What happens next is your choice." The transmission ended. On the Imperial flagship, the command staff was still amused by human defiance. "Typical primitive response," General Thane observed. "They always threaten what they cannot deliver." "Begin the invasion," Admiral Korthak ordered. "Standard formation, orbital bombardment of military targets, then landing forces for occupation. This world will fall before their sun sets." On Earth, President Nathan Cross stood before the emergency session of the United Nations. Representatives from every nation sat in the assembly hall, but their faces showed no panic. Instead, there was a strange calm, as if they had been waiting for this moment. "Operation Homestead is now active," the president announced. "All civilian populations are to proceed to designated safe zones immediately. Military commanders, you have full authorization for all planned defensive measures." In cities around the world, people moved with practiced efficiency. This was not the first time they had drilled for alien invasion. Every major population center had been quietly prepared for siege warfare. Underground tunnel networks connected safe zones to supply depots. Every building had been surveyed for defensive positions. Every citizen had been trained in basic combat and sabotage techniques. Dr. Brooks activated the quantum communication network that connected all Earth defense installations. The system used principles that the Empire had never encountered, technology developed specifically for fighting under the electromagnetic interference of solar storms. "All stations, this is Central Command," he broadcast. "The trap is set. Remember, we are not just defending Earth, we are studying the enemy. Every ship they lose, every tactic they reveal, every piece of technology they bring down, all of it will be captured and analyzed." Major Carter ran final checks on her fighter squadron. The aircraft looked primitive by galactic standards, but they had been modified with experimental technology that took advantage of Earth's unique magnetic field. More importantly, they were flown by pilots who had trained their entire lives for three-dimensional combat. "Remember," she told her pilots, "they think like ground dwellers who learned to fly. They have never fought against opponents who evolved in a three-dimensional environment. Use that." Captain Bill Ross, the squadron's best pilot, checked his weapons systems. "Ma'am, what if their technology is too advanced for us to handle?" Carter smiled. "Bill, we're not trying to match their technology. We're trying to break their will to fight. Every species in that empire surrenders when faced with unacceptable losses. They have never encountered a species that fights harder when cornered." The invasion fleet moved into Earth's solar system like a steel tide. Admiral Korthak stood on his command deck, confident in his overwhelming superiority. Behind him, his staff prepared for what they expected to be the shortest conquest in Imperial history. They had no idea they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in the galaxy. The first wave of Imperial assault ships broke through Earth's atmosphere like burning meteors. Admiral Korthak watched from his flagship as hundreds of landing craft descended on major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, all would fall within hours. "All units report successful atmospheric entry," General Thane announced. "No significant resistance detected. Beginning occupation of primary targets." On the command deck, representatives from the 12 Empire species observed with satisfaction. This was how conquests were supposed to proceed. Overwhelming force, quick surrender, minimal casualties. Above Denver, Major Lisa Carter led her fighter squadron in a desperate-looking intercept course. The human aircraft appeared fragile compared to the massive Imperial landing ships like insects attacking giants. "Fox Squadron, this is Phoenix Leader." Carter's voice crackled over the radio. "Remember your training. These pilots have never fought in a gravity well. Show them what Earthborn means." Captain Bill Ross dove his F-35 toward the nearest landing ship. The alien craft was 3 times the size of his fighter, armored with energy shields that should have made it invulnerable to kinetic weapons. Ross did not try to penetrate the shields. Instead, he flew directly at the alien pilot's cockpit, weapons blazing. The Imperial pilot, a member of the Vectar species, had trained for space combat where collisions were easily avoided. The sight of a smaller craft diving straight at him, with no intention of changing course, triggered every survival instinct. At the last second, the alien ship veered away, directly into the flight path of another human fighter. The collision destroyed both alien ships. Ross pulled out of his dive with G-forces that would have killed most Empire species, laughing into his radio. "One down. These guys fly like they're afraid of getting hurt." The pattern repeated across the sky. Human pilots, trained from childhood in 3-dimensional combat games, performed maneuvers that violated every principle of safe flying. They used gravity as a weapon, turned atmospheric pressure into an advantage, and showed a complete disregard for personal safety that terrified their opponents. On the ground in Manhattan, the Empire's shock troops faced their first real surprise. The city had not been evacuated. Instead, every building, every street corner, every subway entrance had become a fortress. Sergeant Danny Rodriguez crouched behind an overturned taxi, watching Imperial soldiers advance down Fifth Avenue. The aliens moved in perfect formation, their energy weapons sweeping for targets. They looked invincible in their powered armor. "Now," Rodriguez whispered into his radio. The street exploded, not from alien weapons, but from charges placed in the sewers, the subway tunnels, and the foundations of nearby buildings. The Empire soldiers' shields protected them from energy weapons and projectiles, but they had never encountered an enemy that used urban infrastructure as a weapon. Michelle Price, an accountant who had volunteered for the resistance, triggered the second wave of explosions from her position in a coffee shop. The building's windows had been replaced with one-way mirrors, turning every storefront into a sniper's nest. "Welcome to New York," she muttered, squeezing the trigger of her rifle. The Imperial soldiers tried to respond with standard suppression tactics, but their training assumed they were fighting other soldiers. Instead, they faced shop owners, teachers, construction workers. People who knew every inch of their neighborhood and had turned it into a killing ground. Tony Martinez, who had spent 20 years building skyscrapers, now used his knowledge to bring them down. Carefully placed explosives sent debris raining onto alien formations. Helen Young, a retired teacher, coordinated civilian movements through the subway system, turning the underground into a hidden highway for human forces. Dr. Kevin Brooks monitored the battle from his command center, analyzing every piece of alien technology that fell into human hands. Each destroyed Imperial ship was immediately swarmed by recovery teams who stripped out weapons, computers, and power sources. "Amy, activate Operation Static Storm," he ordered. Amy Foster's fingers flew over her control panel. Across the planet, carefully hidden transmitters came online. The signals they broadcast were based on Earth's own solar storm patterns, electromagnetic pulses that human technology had been hardened against for decades. The Empire's communication networks, designed for the stable electromagnetic environment of garden worlds, began failing immediately. Imperial units found themselves cut off from command, isolated in a hostile environment where every human they encountered might be an enemy. In orbit, Admiral Korthak stared at his tactical display in growing confusion. His perfectly organized invasion was becoming chaos. Landing ships were crashing or retreating. Ground forces were requesting emergency extraction. Most disturbing of all, his communications with planetary forces were sporadic at best. "Report," he roared. Commander Zixtal's insectoid features showed distress. "Admiral, we are experiencing massive communication interference. The humans appear to be using some form of electromagnetic warfare." "Impossible. Their technology is primitive." "Sir," Dr. Mordeth interrupted, studying his sensors, "I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. It appears the humans have been preparing for this invasion for some time." "General," Thane's mechanical voice carried disbelief, "no primitive species has ever resisted Imperial assault forces for more than 6 hours. It has been 18 hours and we control no significant territory." Below in Manhattan, the true scope of human preparation was becoming clear. The Empire soldiers had managed to establish a perimeter around Times Square, but they were not controlling territory. They were trapped in it. Every building around them contained hostile forces. Every sewer entrance was a potential attack route. Every piece of debris might hide explosives. Captain Ross, now flying a fighter cobbled together from human and captured alien technology, led a strike on Imperial positions in Central Park. The hybrid aircraft moved like nothing the Empire had ever seen, combining human agility with alien power. "This is Phoenix leader to all ground units," he broadcast. "The sky belongs to us now. Tell me where you want the fireworks." Rodriguez coordinated the ground response from his position in the subway tunnels. Around him, a mix of soldiers and civilians worked together with the easy cooperation of people defending their home. "Construction crews, we need Building 7 brought down on my mark. Medical teams, prepare for casualties at Checkpoint Delta. Everyone else, remember? We are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to make them quit." The words summed up humanity's entire strategy. Every other species the Empire had conquered fought according to military doctrine. Organized resistance designed to minimize casualties and preserve civilization. Humans fought like their entire planet was expendable, because to them, surrender was worse than death. In the command bunker beneath NORAD, Colonel Hayes watched reports flow in from around the globe. London had turned into a maze of urban warfare where alien technology was useless in narrow streets. Tokyo's population had simply vanished into underground complexes, leaving behind empty buildings rigged with traps. Moscow's defenders were using the winter weather as a weapon, forcing alien troops to fight in conditions their equipment was not designed for. "Status report, Kevin," Hayes requested. Dr. Brooks smiled grimly. "We have recovered 17 intact Imperial fighters, 43 ground vehicles, and enough energy weapons to equip 3 divisions. Our tech teams are already reverse engineering their power sources. Casualties? Heavy, but within acceptable parameters. More importantly, Imperial forces are starting to show signs of demoralization. They expected quick surrender, not prolonged urban warfare." Hayes nodded. The trap was working perfectly. Every hour the Empire remained on Earth, they lost more equipment and confidence. More importantly, they were learning that humans did not fight wars, they fought for survival, and survival meant the complete destruction of any threat to their world. In orbit, Admiral Korthak made a decision that would doom his invasion. Instead of withdrawing to reassess, he committed his reserves. If the humans wanted a real war, the Empire would give them one. 3 weeks into what should have been a 3-day conquest, Admiral Korthak stood in his command center watching his empire crumble. The tactical display showed red warning indicators across every continent on Earth. Not a single Imperial unit reported secure control of their objectives. Admiral, Commander Zixtal's voice carried a note of panic that no Imperial officer should ever display. We have lost contact with the 7th Landing Division. Their last transmission reported they were surrounded in what the humans call Chicago. General Thane's cybernetic systems processed the data with mechanical precision. Estimated losses now exceed 40% of our ground forces. Equipment recovery has dropped to 0. Every piece of technology we lose appears to be immediately captured and reverse-engineered by human forces. Korthak's massive claws scraped against the metal console. This was impossible. The Empire had conquered species with advanced energy weapons, planetary shields, and space-based defenses. How were primitives with chemical rockets and metal bullets not only resisting, but winning? Dr. Mordeth looked up from his analysis station, his gray features pale with shock. Admiral, I believe we have made a fundamental error in our assessment of human capabilities. Explain. We analyzed their technology and found it primitive. We studied their military doctrine and found it standard. But we failed to understand their psychology. These humans do not fight wars the way civilized species do. All species fight the same way when faced with superior force, Korthak said. They calculate odds, minimize losses, and surrender when defeat becomes inevitable. Not humans, sir. I have been monitoring their communications. They view this invasion as an opportunity, not a threat. They are capturing our technology faster than we can deploy it. Worse, they are improving it. On Earth, Colonel Hayes stood in what had once been Times Square, now the site of humanity's greatest victory. Around him, the wreckage of Imperial vehicles served as barricades for human defenders. But the humans were no longer just defending, they were hunting. Captain Ross landed his hybrid fighter on what remained of Broadway. The aircraft was barely recognizable as human technology anymore. Imperial power cores fed energy weapons that no Earth factory had built, while alien navigation systems were integrated with human reflexes and creativity. Colonel, we have a problem, Ross said, removing his helmet. A good problem, but still a problem. What's that, Bill? We're running out of targets. The aliens are staying in orbit now. They won't come down to fight anymore. Hayes smiled grimly. That had been the plan all along. Operation Homestead was never about defending Earth. It was about turning the planet into a trap that would capture an entire invasion fleet. Sergeant Rodriguez emerged from a subway entrance, leading a mixed team of soldiers and civilians. Behind them came a group of Imperial prisoners, not captured in battle but surrendered voluntarily when they realized the futility of their situation. Danny, what's the status on prisoner integration? Hayes asked. Better than expected, sir. Turns out most of these species only fight because they're ordered to. Once they're away from their command structure, they're actually pretty reasonable. Dr. Yargoth here has been helping our tech teams understand Imperial power systems. One of the alien prisoners, a tall being with multiple arms, stepped forward, nervously. Colonel Hayes, I must warn you. Admiral Korthak is planning to use orbital bombardment. He would rather destroy your world than admit defeat. Dr. Brooks appeared from the makeshift command center that had been built inside a damaged department store. That's what I was afraid of. Ryan, we need to move to the final phase. Hayes nodded. Amy, signal all units. Operation Reversal is now active. Across the planet, human forces that had spent 3 weeks learning Imperial technology began their counterattack. But they were not aiming at ground targets. They were going after the ships in orbit. Major Carter led the first wave, flying a squadron of hybrid fighters that looked like nothing any engineer had ever designed. Human ingenuity combined with alien technology had produced aircraft that could operate in both atmosphere and space, using power sources that defied Imperial understanding. All units, remember your training. Carter broadcast as her squadron climbed toward orbit. We're not trying to destroy their ships, we're trying to capture them. Every vessel we take is one more addition to Earth's new space fleet. The Imperial fleet that had once seemed invincible now faced an enemy they could not understand. Human pilots flew with a recklessness that should have been suicidal, but their success rate was impossible to ignore. They used ramming tactics that no sane species would attempt, only to pull away at the last second when the alien pilots flinched. Boarding parties led by specialists like Lieutenant Commander Kate Phillips and Master Sergeant Paul Jenkins attacked Imperial ships using captured teleportation technology. But where Imperial Marines followed strict protocols for ship-to-ship combat, humans treated every corridor as an urban warfare scenario. Left side, elevator shaft, Phillips called out as her team moved through an Imperial cruiser. Paul, can you get us an explosive surprise for the next group of defenders? Jenkins grinned, pulling components from captured alien equipment. Give me 30 seconds and I'll turn their own life support system into a smoke grenade. The human. Boarding parties moved through Imperial ships like water flowing around obstacles, adapting to each new challenge with improvised solutions that horrified their opponents. They used artificial gravity as a weapon, turned automated systems against their operators, and showed a complete disregard for the normal rules of ship combat. Dr. Brooks coordinated the technical aspects of the captures from his orbital command post, a captured Imperial science vessel that human engineers had completely rebuilt. Around him, a mix of human technicians and cooperative alien prisoners worked together to understand and improve the captured technology. Kate, we're reading massive power fluctuations from your target, he warned over the radio. Are you sure about using their own reactor as an entrance point? Negative, Doc, Phillips replied. We're not using their reactor as an entrance. We're using it as an exit strategy. Sometimes the best way through a door is to make the entire wall disappear. The explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the Imperial fleet, not because it destroyed a ship, but because it proved human capabilities. The cruiser's reactor had been overloaded in a precise pattern that disabled the vessel without killing the crew, a level of technical skill that should have been impossible for a primitive species. Admiral Korthak watched his fleet dissolve into chaos. Human forces were not just defeating Imperial ships, they were capturing them, crewing them with mixed human-alien teams, and turning them against their former comrades. Sir, General Thane reported, his mechanical voice carrying an emotion his cybernetic systems should not have been able to process. Fear. The humans have captured 18 vessels intact. They are using our own ships against us. How is this possible? Korthak roared. They had no space-capable military 3 weeks ago. Dr. Mordeth provided the answer that shattered the Admiral's worldview. They learn, sir, faster than any species we have encountered. They take our technology and immediately improve it. They study our tactics and develop counters within hours. Most importantly, they think in ways that we cannot predict. On the captured Imperial dreadnought that humans had renamed the UES Defiance, Colonel Hayes stood on what had once been Admiral Korthak's command deck. Around him, human officers worked alongside alien prisoners who had chosen cooperation over continued warfare. Admiral, Hayes said into the communication system, this is Colonel Ryan Hayes of Earth Defense Command. I am speaking to you from the bridge of what used to be your ship Eternal Dominion. I believe it is time we discuss terms. Korthak's image appeared on the screen, his massive form showing signs of the stress that had consumed him over the past 3 weeks. Behind him, his command staff looked like defeated beings who had lost everything they believed about the nature of warfare. What terms? Korthak asked, his voice hollow. Simple ones. Complete withdrawal from the Sol system. Reparations in the form of technology and resources. Formal recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with territorial rights. In exchange, we will return your surviving ships and crews. And if we refuse? Hayes's expression showed the same calm confidence that had marked humanity's entire defense. Then you will discover what happens when a Death World species decides to expand beyond their home system. Admiral, you came here expecting to conquer primitives. Instead, you found apex predators who have been preparing for this fight their entire evolutionary history. The silence that followed lasted for several minutes. Finally, Admiral Korthak spoke the words that ended the hegemonic empire's perfect record of conquest. We surrender. Admiral Korthak stood in what had once been his private quarters aboard the Eternal Dominion, now renamed the UES Defiance. Through the viewport, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue jewel. It looked so peaceful, so harmless. Nothing about its appearance suggested it was home to the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy. Colonel Hayes entered the room, carrying a tablet with the formal surrender documents. Behind him came Dr. Brooks and 2 guards, not to protect Hayes from Korthak, but to ensure the Admiral's safety from human crew members who still considered him an enemy. Admiral, Hayes said, his tone respectful but firm. The terms are ready for your signature. Korthak took the tablet with claws that trembled slightly. 3 weeks ago, he had commanded the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history. Now, he was signing the surrender of the entire hegemonic empire. Tell me, Korthak said without looking up from the documents, when did you know you would win? Hayes considered the question carefully. We did not know we would win, Admiral. We knew we would never surrender. Those are different things. The Zephyrian warning, Captain Vexithera tried to save your people from unnecessary suffering. The Empire chose not to listen. Korthak signed the surrender documents with a claw that left deep scratches in the metal tablet. What happens now? Dr. Brooks stepped forward. Now, Admiral, you and your people learn what it means to live in a galaxy where Earth exists. We are not conquerors like your empire. We do not wish to rule other species. But we will not tolerate threats to our world or our allies. In the observation lounge, Jake Morrison sat across from Captain Vexithera. The Zephyrian had arrived with the first diplomatic mission, bringing news from the galaxy beyond Earth's solar system. Your government has requested that I serve as humanity's first ambassador to the galactic community, Jake said. I wanted to thank you for trying to warn the Empire. Vexithera's 4 eyes showed sadness. Thousands died because they would not listen. My people tried to prevent this tragedy. Your people will be our first allies, Jake assured her. The galaxy is about to change, Captain. The Empire's defeat will send a message to every species that practices conquest. Earth is no longer isolated. What will humans do with their victory? Jake smiled, the same predatory expression that had once made Vexithera uncomfortable. Now she understood it was not aimed at her people. We will do what humans always do when we discover a new frontier. We will explore it. In the rebuilt United Nations building in New York, President Cross addressed an expanded assembly that now included representatives from 12 alien species, the former members of the hegemonic empire, who had chosen cooperation over continued conflict. The defeat of the empire marks the beginning of a new era, the president said. Earth will not become an empire ourselves. Instead, we offer partnership to any species that shares our values of freedom and self-determination. Dr. Yargoth, the imperial physicist who had become humanity's first alien collaborator, stood to address the assembly. Honorable humans, my people have learned much from our defeat. We wish to share our knowledge freely as payment for the mercy you have shown. Knowledge shared benefits everyone, President Cross replied. We look forward to learning from each other. In orbit around Earth, construction had begun on humanity's first interstellar vessel. The UES Terra combined the best of human engineering with alien technology, but more importantly, it represented a new philosophy of space exploration. Where the Empire had built ships for conquest, humans built them for discovery. Captain Ross, now commander of Earth's hybrid space force, supervised the construction from the bridge of his flagship, the captured Imperial carrier that had been redesigned from the ground up. Status report, Paul, he requested. Master Sergeant Jenkins, now serving as Chief of Ship Operations, consulted his displays. Terra will be ready for space trials in 6 months. The crew will be 60% human, 40% volunteer aliens, from cooperative species. And our mission? exploration, and peacekeeping. We've received distress signals from 14 different star systems, species requesting help against Imperial remnants or other aggressive neighbors. Ross nodded. This was what humanity did best. Not conquest, but protection of those who could, not protect themselves. In the depths of NORAD, now expanded into a full interplanetary command center, Colonel Hayes reviewed reports from across the galaxy. The Empire's defeat had created a power vacuum that various factions were trying to fill, but none of them possessed the Empire's overwhelming advantage. "Amy, what's our communication status with the outer colonies?" he asked. Amy Foster, now Director of Interstellar Communications, checked her systems. "All clear, sir. The quantum communication network is operating at full efficiency. We can coordinate with our allies across dozens of star systems in real time." Major Carter entered the command center, still wearing the flight suit that marked her as commander of humanity's spacefighter corps. "Ryan, we have a situation developing in the Kepler system. 3 different species are fighting over Imperial remnants there. Recommendations? Send a task force. Not to conquer, but to mediate. These species are destroying each other over technology they do not understand. We can help them find a peaceful solution." Hayes approved the mission with a simple nod. This was how humanity would expand among the stars, not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers who had proven they could defeat any aggressive force. Dr. Brooks emerged from his laboratory carrying a device that looked like a cross between human engineering and alien technology. "Ryan, I have something to show you. We have successfully integrated Imperial faster-than-light technology with human navigation systems." "What does that mean?" "It means we can reach any point in the galaxy within weeks instead of years. More importantly, it means no aggressive species can threaten Earth without us knowing about it well in advance." The final piece of humanity's transformation fell into place. They were no longer the isolated primitives of a backwater world. They had become the galaxy's new guardians, protectors of freedom in a cosmos that had been dominated by empire and conquest. In his cell aboard the UES Defiance, Admiral Korthak received a final visit from Colonel Hayes before being transported back to his home world. "Admiral, you asked me when we knew we would win," Hayes said. "I want to give you a better answer." Korthak looked up with eyes that held newfound respect for the human officer. "Humans do not fight to win wars, Admiral. We fight to end them. The Empire thought victory meant conquest. We believe victory means peace. That difference in philosophy is why your empire fell and why humanity will succeed. What will you do if another empire rises to challenge you?" Hayes smiled, but there was no threat in the expression, only certainty. "We will do what we have always done, Admiral. We will protect our home, defend our allies, and teach aggressors that freedom is not negotiable." As the transport carrying Imperial prisoners departed for their homeworlds, Earth's transformation into the galaxy's newest superpower was complete. Not through conquest, but through the simple demonstration that some things were worth fighting. For no matter the odds, the blue world that had once seemed so primitive now commanded respect throughout the galaxy. The species that called it home had proven themselves to be exactly what Captain Vexithera had warned. Apex predators from a death world who would never surrender, never retreat, and never stop protecting those who could not protect themselves. The vast cosmos where empire and conquest had once ruled, a new age had begun. An age where the defenders of freedom carried names like Hayes, Carter, Brooks, and Ross. An age where Earth's children would explore the stars not as conquerors, but as guardians of peace. The galaxy would never be the same.